where if I was running under the clean election system, I get a certain dollar amount to run my campaign. But if Angela's running against me in the primary and she's self-financed and she spends 3 times as much money in the primary as I was given from the state as a participating candidate, then I get a dollar for dollar match up to 3 times the amount of my original gift. Does that make sense? The idea behind it is so that I can truly be competitive. Because Angela's, running around handing out Angela lollipops and stuff like that, That is the provision that was struck down by Judge Silver, the matching funds provision. And it was similar to the Citizens United case, it was on a First Amendment restriction of freedom of speech. See, a number of years ago, the Supreme Court decided that money was speech in elections. I fundamentally disagree with that, but that's what they have ruled, and they've ruled that for quite some time, that money is a form of speech in influencing elections, and that with your money, you are choosing what you want to say. I think that's highly problematic for democracy, but that's the established precedent in our country. And so the argument against the clean elections matching provisions, matching funds provision in our state statute was quite simply this. Angela would have argued to the court that she had to not spend as much money because if she spent as much money as she wanted to, it would have benefited me, her opponent. And because that would have hurt her, she chose not to spend that extra money and therefore was stifled in her free speech argument, right? Of course, there's, I think, a very simple argument in response. It's like, well, you made that choice, good for you. However, Judge Silver ruled with plaintiffs and said that if someone chooses on their own not to spend as much money as they want because they're afraid that the other person will get extra money to match them, that stifles their freedom of speech, even though it's clearly their own personal choice. Anyway, bottom line is we lost that provision about a week and a half ago. The case is on appeal to the Ninth Circuit. And the Ninth Circuit will decide within the next 2 to 3 weeks on whether or not they'll accept the case. And if they do accept the case, we're not sure what they'll do with it. We do know this: it will not likely be resolved before the election. So the big decision for the Ninth Circuit is quite simply this. Do they stay the decision, which means, look, Judge Silver, we understand that you made this decision, but since the election's coming up around the corner, we're not going to implement it until we've finished resolving the further litigation. That's a stay. If that stay occurs, then clean elections with matching funds will continue through this election cycle, probably for the last time. But if the court chooses not to issue the stay and allows the litigation to continue without the stay, then there will be no matching funds provision for this election. Yes?
Where does the state get the matching funds from, since they can't afford to do anything else?
Well, that's a great question. So the good news is that the Clean Elections Fund is a separate fund. It's not part of the state budget, which is good, because otherwise they would have stolen it all. Yeah. In 1998, when the voters passed the Clean Elections Initiative, they also indicated in the initiative where they wanted to get the money from. And it comes from 2 sources. A 10% fine that is added to parking tickets and speeding violations. So, which I have done my part to contribute. I am a haphazard parker. I just will admit that. I'm just always in a hurry. I'm like parking, then I come out later, I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have parked there. The other source is from voluntary contributions that voters make. Like I hope all of you have taken the opportunity to do tonight for Terry Goddard. If you haven't, please don't leave without doing it. We really need these. Today's Terry's birthday. Aww. Yeah, it's his birthday. And all he wants are $5 forms. So please, make sure you fill them out. In fact, I'm happy to take him down for you. Terry's my constituent. So if you fill them all out, I take them down, then I'll be like, look at the Sedona Democrats. And then I can brag about how much better you were than Sun City. I was at Sun City last month. Every single person at the meeting filled one out. No pressure. Okay, so what will happen? We will find out in 2 or 3 weeks whether or not there's a stay. I don't know if there's going to be a stay. The reason for a stay to be granted would be that, it's so close to the election and it's just unsure. We're not sure what's going to happen. But that's not a super strong argument, frankly, because we've been waiting for this decision for like a year. So we've kind of been in the not knowing phase for a long time. So I don't know what's going to happen. The good news is that regardless of whether or not matching funds continues after the next couple weeks, Terry Goddard will still be running as a clean elections candidate because he will still qualify for that money and he'll still get that primary installment and the general election installment. The question is simply whether or not he gets extra if his opponent happens to be a privately funded candidate. If matching funds goes away, there's still lots of ways for us to work through the party to make sure that we're able to get out the vote and educate people about the election. So we can still use those avenues to fundraise and to do turnout in the election, which is what you'll be doing when your office opens this spring. Okay, so I've covered, legislature, right. Okay, so back to the governor. Depressing. So the governor released her budget several weeks ago, 2 weeks ago actually, and in her budget she does a number of things. Number one, she proposes a 1 cent sales tax increase. She wanted it passed by the legislature, but she's given in on that. It looks like it's going to come in a special session on Monday. Looks like she's going to call a special session on Monday. And she wants the legislature to refer the 1 cent sales tax to the ballot. Now, some of you have probably heard that we've done this before, right? Like 3 times. And it's never actually gotten referred to the ballot before. You know that because you haven't voted on it. Well, let me tell you why. Because every time the sales tax would come up for a vote, the Republicans attached massive tax breaks for corporations on the same bill. And so, like, I'm no math major, but basically the idea was to raise about $800 million in revenue through the sales tax increase for just 3 years. $800 million a year for 3 years. Got it? And simultaneously implement about $800 million a year of tax cuts. But those last forever. So, do the math. It comes out to 0 for 3 years. And then after that, it's negative 800 million. Right? Now, I don't know about you, I don't think that's a good way to solve the deficit, right? Like, 0 does not fill the hole. So Democrats have steadfastly opposed these proposals because we can do basic math. And we know that 0 does not fix the problem. Meanwhile, Republicans have cut well over $1 billion of actual spending on programs, and that includes things from healthcare to education, and most devastatingly, the Department of Economic Security, which is the department that pays for child protective services and in-home care for homebound seniors, homelessness, domestic violence, special care for children born with congenital defects, services for the developmentally disabled. The list goes on, you're going to start crying. So the Department of Economic Security has taken a cut of about 38%. It's the most massive cut in the state. And they've done some really boneheaded things as well, like, for instance, close 21 of 30 state parks, which are one of the very few areas of the state budget that actually make money instead of spend money. So that didn't seem like a great idea to me. They also cut over 1/3 of the staff of the Department of Revenue. Now, you guys know Department of Revenue, right? Because you mail them a check each year, like your tax return, and then their job is to open up the check and then cash it, and then that money goes into the state fund. We fired all those guys. We literally don't have enough people to open the checks. I know. I might go down and volunteer. That'll be more money I've seen in a long time. So we fired over 1/3 of the staff of the Department of Revenue, which means we've lost millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of capability of gathering taxes. Not just from regular folks, but from delinquent folks, corporations who've chosen not to pay and are just kind of hoping no one will notice. Well, guess what? No one's going to notice because there's no staff at the Department of Revenue. The Democrats have proposed that we just spend $1.4 million, which, by the way, is like a nickel in the state budget, that we just spend that money to hire all those guys back, and in return, we'll get over $300 million this year in revenue. Now, that seems like a really smart investment, right? That's like almost a 300% return on your investment. I would bet on that. That proposal hasn't gone anywhere. So in addition to the governor's 1 cent sales tax idea, so she wants to put that on the ballot. We're concerned about putting that on the ballot because the polls show that the voters don't really want to vote for it. And if the voters vote it down in a special election, then we're really screwed, right? Because let me tell you, right now we have a $1.4 billion deficit. Now, 1.4 billion sounds like a whole lot of money, but when you think about the fact that our budget's only 8.6 billion, it's really a lot. So we have to fill that $1.4 billion hole quickly, because that's for the budget for the year we're actually in. After we finish that, then we get to tackle next year's budget, which has a deficit of